Hey everybody, I'm Justin Michael A. Today I'm going to talk about the creative process in about 10 minutes. I'm going to talk about how to get unstuck, how to optimize your creative rhythm, how to become better and more prolific, and ultimately how to do more focused creative work. I'll split these videos for the thread. Let's get started. I've written lots of speeches, threads, and posts, and I've been asked one question over and over. How rigid and structured is your note-taking system? Some people go full second brain, others have a little notebook. What works for you? What works for me is a simple system I've developed over a decade of experimenting, overcomplicating things, and then later paring things down to their essentials. I wish somebody had sat me down at 22 and forced me to understand this. Up front, it's worth noting there are no shortcuts. As Jack Butcher has noted, the shortcut is to stop looking for the shortcut. And as Jack has also said, the long way is the shortcut. But there is a simple practice that translates into enormous competitive advantages. It's not a perfect system, but in fact, you want an imperfect system that just works. In the words of Dickie Bush, the single most productive thing I've done in my entire life was giving up trying to create the perfect note-taking system. But here's the problem. Our memories are terrible. We tend to think we remember more than we do, but to a first approximation, we've forgotten everything we've learned. By the time you've read a book or listened to a podcast, you retain a fraction of its fidelity, and the rest decays at an alarming rate. Think about your favorite podcast and try to remember 3 things you've learned from it. Unless you capture your own ideas and what's resonating with you, important ideas will fade away in your memory exponentially. Now, there's a myth that spaced repetition, constantly reminding yourself or rereading what you've already read, will solve this problem, when in fact it does not. It does not fundamentally change the shape of this exponential decay, but rather shifts it up and to the right. It helps, but it's not what we're going for. The solution, of course, is to take notes and build a book of wisdom throughout your life, in effect systematically harvesting value from everything you consume. This has the opposite effect of fading memories. The graph changes shape, and your ideas build on one another, on each other, for the rest of your life. Now, it's possible to go through the rest of your professional life without learning this reality, but once you do, you'll never face a blank page again. Taking notes creates memories that never fade, giving you the ability to speak to anyone in time or space, including yourself now and in the future. What this means in practice is that you become prolific. You fill yourself with ideas you love, you learn to write and create fast, you leverage thinking you've already done, and you connect thoughts and make surprising discoveries. There's a few memorable metaphors to understand this process. I think of taking notes as a motor for your writing and creative process. David Perell, the great writing instructor, has said that you're manufacturing an arsenal of ideas or building a coliseum of ideas. Others have said that you're marshaling forces as if on a parade ground, and you can call them into formation whenever you'd like. There's a reason the Greeks called the mother of all muses the goddess of memory. Today, they are memorialized, and their name has been given to storehouses of knowledge. We call them museums, and you can create your own. When you take notes in your own words, you're in effect extruding thoughts outside of your head and then cooling them off. This takes raw, ephemeral, amorphous ideas and gives them shape and permanence. They become simple, detachable, configurable, and extensible bricks added to your collection. They're meant to connect and interlock with other bricks. They're all visible and arranged in front of you like toys. The biggest of the big ideas is that creativity takes place outside of your head. Now, this is a huge creative relief. Your task is to let ideas free fall, as if by gravity, out of your head and toward the ideas that are already on the page. But to do that, you have to concentrate ideas outside of your head in the first place. Put another way, notes don't make thinking easier, they make it possible. As Neil Levy once put it, the mind is reliant upon external scaffolding. And to paraphrase Dr. Zonka Arens, writing doesn't follow creative work, it's the medium of it. I want to emphasize that this is not new. This stretches back millennia, and it really took shape in early modern England 500 years ago with Erasmus of Rotterdam and his travels throughout Europe, and the idea of commonplacing, putting all of the things you're reading, passages, excerpts, into one commonplace according to themes and headers and so forth. And there's been endless variations of this since. The wonderful Zettelkasten system pioneered by Marshall McLuhan, Dr. Zonke Arend's variation of this, How to Take Smart Notes, even this year with the introduction of the book by Tiago Forte, Building a Second Brain. These are all strains and threads of the same ideas. I call this very simple practice building a book of wisdom. I borrowed that phrase from a former boss of mine, Jim Mattis. I worked with him twice, both at U.S. Central Command and at the Pentagon. And he, for decades, kept these dog-eared binders of hundreds of pages of his excerpts and aphorisms and poems and wonderful learnings, the wisdom that he'd developed and been exposed to throughout the course of his life. It's also not complicated. The idea is threefold. First, you want to find great sources, the best sources you can, the highest quality sources you can, the classics of the literature in your field. The second is read them over and over and over again. And the third, of course, is take notes in your own words, which I'll get to in just a moment. I want to stress as well that you're not just consuming these rich information sources. You're doing something much deeper than that. And there's better ways to put it, better verb choices here. So I would say harvest, to commune, to live with, to inhabit, to channel, and to consort with is a better description of the practice. I do this all with one table. You could do this in Notion, you could do this on a Google Sheet, you could do this in Excel, you could do this in a notebook, you could do this in any way, but it really just involves 6 columns, so it's just a data table. I do it in Notion, and the way you do it is anytime something resonates with you, when you come across something that you love, which happens many times a day these days, you capture it. And then you take notes in your own words, and then you create pointers from those notes back to the original source. This is all very sensible, obvious even, but as you'll see, there is one very, very important caveat. Okay, here's my table. It's in Notion. I call it Notes. Now, there's 6 columns: heading, thought, tags, thinker, note/URL, and the so what card. And let me describe each of these in turn. First of all, you're going to be reading what resonates with you, and if there's one particular passage that you want to save, you copy paste it into column 2, the thought column. But then you assign a header to it. The header, you want it to be somewhat expressive, but really it's just what's the theme that this relates to as a reminder to your future self. And then, of course, you want to establish tags, and you assign these in Notion very easily. You don't necessarily have to do this if you do it in Excel or Sheets. It helps me understand the various areas and projects that it would be relevant to me. The next column, of course, is the thinker. Who actually wrote and who is to be given credit for this? And this is just helpful to not only give credit, but then to filter down on any particular thinker. Then, of course, you want to refer back in this column, the URL column or the source column. So this is the book title, potentially the page of the book, the URL linking back to the article that you read, etc. But here is the most important thing and why I made this video for you today. Column 6 is what I had failed to do for a decade of my professional life. And this is the game changer that I must share with you as the most important step here. If you copy something from the internet or from a book into your book of wisdom, your Notion notes page, the thing that will catapult you to success is then rewriting column 2 into column 6 in your own words. And the purpose is not to copy. The purpose is never to mirror somebody else's thoughts or pass them off as your own. The purpose is instead to take mental ownership and to prove to yourself that you understand what you just copied and pasted. Then you'll have the beginnings of thoughts outside of your head, and then you will be able to write with these notes, not from a blank page. You copy any relevant note on any particular project or theme or article from this column into a Word doc, and I promise you, you'll be off to the races. So just to recap, this should be your creative rhythm. If you do these three things daily, you cannot be stopped. Read about the ideas you love. Take notes from the reading in your own words. Create pointers from your notes to your reading. And you will not be able, you cannot help yourself from creating. I'll leave you with the words of the author Stephen King. Read a lot, write a lot. That's it. That's my personal note-taking system. I think it helps my creative process. Hopefully it will help yours. I would love to hear what is working for you and if you have any questions about this particular practice.